Hey guys, so here is video 5 review for the test. So what we want to know here is the 5 indicators of a chemical reaction. Now, the key thing with the indicators of a chemical reaction is all chemical reactions result in a chemical change. So we need to know the difference between what's a chemical change and what is a physical change. So let's take a look at that. In a chemical change, it's a change, but the identity also changes. Okay, so not just the physical appearance. The physical change is when a change occurs, but the identity does not change. So, for example, if I am painting my car, right, that would change the color, but it's not the identity, it's still my car, right? Or if I cut a piece of paper, okay, the identity before the change is it's paper, the identity after the change is still paper. But an example of a chemical change would be burning the paper. Okay, if I burned the paper, then I would produce ash and smoke, and there would be a gas made, and there's all this sort of thing, and it's not still paper anymore. So it would be a chemical change, and a chemical reaction were to occur. So there are 5 indicators. The first one is an unexpected color change. And the word unexpected is extremely important there. That's because if I have red food coloring and I add it to yellow food coloring, I should not be surprised when it produces orange, right? That is not surprising. However, if we were to look at one of the equations we balanced earlier, potassium iodide plus lead nitrate produces potassium nitrate and lead iodide. Okay, what would happen is we would see that I start off with 2 clear liquids, and when I mix them together, I get a yellow solid plus 1 clear liquid still. And so we can see that this production of having, if we look at the color change, we have 2 clear liquids making something yellow. That is unexpected. So that is an indicator that a chemical reaction has occurred. But if we look at this same example, we also see that we made a solid where there was not one before. And so that vocabulary word is a precipitate. So a precipitate is when a solid is made. Okay, and this is when a new solid is made. It was not there before. Okay, so that would be an example. So we've got 2 indicators of chemical reaction. The third thing would be a change in energy. Okay, now this change in energy could look a couple different ways. It could be a change in the amount of heat around it, or it could be a change in the light, because heat and light are both forms of energy. So for example, if I take a magnesium ribbon and put it in a Bunsen burner and it produces that bright, bright, bright white light that almost hurt your eyes to look at, that would be a change in energy. And if we look at my example of burning the paper, we know that when you burn paper, it gets extremely hot. That is a change in heat, that change in energy. All right, so the fourth thing that we want to look at is the production of water. So if you make water where there was not any beforehand, okay, so and I'm going to put water in parentheses. We shall know that H2O is water. Then a reaction has occurred. Now, you might not always see this unless you're looking at the chemical equation of what is occurring. And then the fifth one is the production of a gas. So creating a gas where there was not one. So oftentimes this looks like fizzing, rapid bubbling. Now, one thing that I would like to for you to keep in mind is that boiling is not a chemical change. If I am changing it from a liquid to a gas by adding heat, that bubbling and that change in energy is purposeful. That is not a chemical change. So when I'm looking at these, okay, let's see the ways that it might appear. So for example, let's take that boiling for example. If I have H2O and it starts off as a liquid, remember an L in parentheses means liquid, and then after this change, I have H2O, but it's a gas. Okay, this is a physical change. Now, the reason why we know it is a physical change and not a chemical one is there is a change, right? I go from liquid to gas. Something has changed. Something has happened. However, the identity of water, H2O, has remained the same. So even if I see bubbling from when the water boils, it is not a chemical change. It is just physical. However, if I were to have that H2O, and let's say it's in a gas form, and it breaks down into hydrogen gas plus oxygen gas. Okay, well now, and this equation would need to be balanced, so let's look at that for a second. So a 2 there and a 2 here. So if this were a reaction, okay, we would see the identity of water at the beginning is no longer the same. Now we have two new substances. I've produced a new gas. So this would be a chemical change or a chemical reaction, okay? All chemical changes result in a chemical reaction. That's they are synonymous, or you can use them interchangeably, okay? Another way that we might look at actual equations to tell is, let's say I look at that potassium iodide again. Let's say we have potassium iodide, and it's AQ means aqueous. Remember, that means it was dissolved in water, and we're adding it to that lead nitrate, which is also dissolved in water, or aqueous, and it produces potassium nitrate, which is still aqueous, but we notice that the lead iodide is now a solid. So one thing that we can note, and I know that this is not balanced, so let's look up to see what was the ratio. 2, 1, 2, 1. So 2, 1, 2, 1. Now it's balanced. What you would need to see is on the left side, we have an aqueous solution. We have an aqueous solution. But on the right side, I only have one aqueous solution. I have this solid. Okay? This right here, the fact that there is a solid, that means this is a precipitate. It is one of those indicators. We also know that a chemical reaction occurred because the identities of these have changed from the reactant side to the product side. So not only can we look at these reactions and be able to look at it based on their identity, but we can also look at it based on those indicators, the things that we might see. Okay, so this was video 5. Check out the last video and you will be well prepared for your test on Wednesday.